All right, welcome back. We're on version 3 of our Loop-D-Loo program. Here we're going to take advantage of the command line interface, and if you enter on the command line --start 10, then it does not need to prompt you to enter the starting number. On the other hand, if you enter --end, then you don't need to enter the ending number. Of course, if you don't enter either one of those, then it's going to prompt you just like it's doing. So this is going to be pretty cool. You can enter either the start or you can enter the end, and based on what you enter is what it will prompt you. And in fact, if you enter both of these, it will not prompt you at all. So think about that, think about the logic, and let's write the code. So the way we have our previous version, that is the version 2, remember that we got to this part. Really what we started adding version 2 was we had a start number and an end number, and we prompted the user for the numbers. Well, the thing is now we can, from the command line, we may be able to get the numbers from the command line, and if so, then we don't need to prompt. So here's what we're going to do. We'll say that both of these numbers, we're going to initialize them to a value that basically we'll use -1. This will be basically an invalid value, or think of this as the initial value. In fact, I think what we'll do is actually use 0, because our requirements, we said the number could go from 1 and higher. So we'll start by setting these both to 0. All right. So that's the first thing. And now we need to handle the command line. And of course, by handling the command line, we're either going to get these numbers or not based on the command line. So what I'm going to do, I could certainly put the code here, but keep in mind the way we like to do things is make it modular, put things in a function whenever we can. So I'm going to say handle command line. So handle underscore command line. And interestingly enough, when you think about handling the command line, what I need to pass into it is the argc, right, the argument from the command line. I need to pass in argv, that is that array of arguments. And also I need to pass in a pointer to the start number and a pointer to the end number. Because after all, when you think about this, what we're going to do by handling the command line is if you've entered these numbers, then we will set them here, you know, if you've entered them. Okay, so just think about this a moment. We're going to handle the command line right here. Now, once we've handled the command line, when we get here, the prompt, instead of always prompting, now we will prompt based on whether we need to prompt. So here's what I'm going to do. Actually, you know what? I think I'll do that in part 2 of this. So let's just focus on this function right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this into my buffer, right? Because this is what I want to implement now. Handle command line. Be passed in the argument count, the argument vector. V stands for vector. The pointer to the start number, pointer to the end number. So I'm going to scroll up here. I'm putting it, always put your functions before main. We'll find out later why we always do this, and even we'll find out how you can do them other places, but for right now, always put them before main. So I'll paste this function here, the one we just copied, and since we're not returning anything, I'll just say void. That is, this function does not return anything from it, but I'll do an open and close curly brace, and we know in here we need to handle these. Now I'm gonna comment out so you can see this is how, actually probably I should do this. This is how it gets called. So this is how it gets called. But what we're going to do now is actually implement this. So I wanted to keep the comment of how it was called, and then I'll put the void. Now this is an integer, so I'm going to say we're passing in an integer named argc. We're going to pass in a character pointer, so a character pointer argv array. So this is going to be an array of character pointers, an array of character pointers. Okay, that's how you'd read that. This start number, this is going to be an integer pointer, will be the start number. I'll move these over here. And then we're going to have an integer pointer to the ending number. And then our open and close curly braces. All right, so that's what we're going to implement. That's what we're going to. And of course, the idea is when we handle the command prompt, first we want to determine if any command arguments were entered at all. So we'll do this. We'll say if no command line args other than the command. Well, if arg count is exactly equal to 1, then we just return, right? Because you haven't entered anything. So we have not entered anything. Now, before we go any further, remember I always like to run my code after entering a little bit of code. So we've entered this. I'll also go up here and say, well, this is going to be a major change. So I'm going to change this to version 3. So we've changed at line number 6, we got version 3. At line number, here starting at 159, handling the command line prompt. And right now, if I run this, yes, I want to continue, enter, and notice it's prompting us. So I'll say 5 and 11. Right, so it prompted us. That tells us, well, it did call this, but since we did not enter anything, there was nothing for it to do. Now let's suppose we did this. Let's suppose we said /main -- start is 10. So if that's the case, then what we see is we're going to always have, at least we should have, if we have more than 1, we should have either 3 or we should have 5, right? It should always be an odd number. We should have 3 or 5. So what I'll do is, if it equals 1, we just return. All right? And we'll say if the arg count is less than 3, right? We need to have at least 1, 2, 3. So if that's the case, we'll say put string. Actually, what we'll do, say put string ignoring. Actually, let's put a usage message. So we'll say if, and by the way, the reason I want to make it clear why I'm literally writing the code as you're watching, so you can get the idea of how code gets written. You know, most books, you look in the book and the code's already been written. They've figured out everything, and you think everything's perfect and just like it is in the book. But real development is like we're seeing here. You may make changes as you're thinking about it, as you're implementing it. So my first thought was I'll just say not enough arguments. In fact, I'll continue that, but we'll come back and change it. So not enough args. And if that's the case, we'll just return. Right? We won't do any more. We will just check and see if. So now if I run, first our default case, it still prompts us 5 and 10. So that still works good. But if I run, and let's say I do, oops, let me stop this, clear my screen. Let me say main and I just say dash dash start. Yes. Well, notice not enough args. Right, so although I said dash main and dash start, I didn't have enough arguments. So I really need to have right, 3 or more arguments. So in other words, let me click on run again. Actually, let me click on stop, clear my screen, /main dash dash start and 10. Do you want to continue? Yes. Well, now notice it went through. We've got the main, we got the dash start, and we've got the 10. So as long as we're greater than 3, then we're good for this. And in fact, what we'll do is say, if we're greater than 3, we know we can handle the first argument. So in other words, we should be able to handle this case here, where we said dash dash start main. So let's do that. We'll say handle first argument. So we'll say if, and watch this carefully, we're going to do a string, and this is brand new, we've never seen this. STR stands for string. A string compare, so strcmp, string compare, of dash dash start. We're going to compare that, in other words, that's what we're looking for, to argv of 1. Argv of 1. Now, why is it 1? Because 0, 1. So we're comparing, we're saying if dash dash start, if we compare these, if that comparison exactly equals to 0. Okay, so if we do a string compare, we're saying compare this string to this string. So compare dash dash start to this dash dash start, argv of 1. If it's equal 0, it means they're equal. And if it's 0, that means we can read in this value. In fact, we can say do a, let's say we want to convert this integer, pardon me, this string to an integer, so we can say a to I, so a to I, giving it argv of 2. Okay, a to I of arg, and where we're going to put this, watch this carefully, this is, we're going to put this in the start number. So in the start number. Okay, let's pause a moment. If string compare, so what this function does, it takes this string and it says, are they the same? Are they the same? And if they're the same, this function returns 0. So if this function returns 0, then we're using this function, one we've used earlier in the course called ASCII to integer. And we're basically saying, take this ASCII string right here, this 10 in our case, and assign it to the start number. Okay, assign it to the start number. So with that, I think what I'll do, since this video is already getting a little long, I'm going to leave that part. Now notice we got a warning. This is a case where we got a warning implicitly declaring. So I'll go ahead and click on run. And sure enough, notice it says warning. Now the reason I went ahead and clicked on run, when you're first learning this, a lot of times it's not clear where does this, what header file should you include. Well, check this out. Main.c, line 70, you should include string.h. So it's in a header file called string.h, which we actually have a whole section, a whole lesson just on what's called strings. But this is our first use of a string function, string compare. So let's go, come on up, and let's say include string.h. String.h has a bunch of functions related to strings. Okay, so this allows us on the command line, we can actually handle entering our start number. All right, we can enter our start number. Now, if I run this, and remember you have to click on run it once here using the default, but then to test this out, you're going to have to run it from the command line, from the shell. So /main -- start is 10. Say yes. Well, notice it's still prompting us. And we don't want it to prompt us. We don't want it to prompt us. We want it to, give it the, we want to have, if we entered start, we don't want to have to enter it here. It should only ask us for the ending number. So let's be pretty clever here. Let's scroll down. And right here where it says handle the command line, when we return from this, if you entered a start number, it's no longer 0. Right? If you entered a start number, it's no longer 0. So this prompt for numbers, we should change this. We should say if 0 is exactly equal to start number. Right? So if we've got 0 is exactly equal to start number, then I'll do my open and close curly brace, and I'll say we will then prompt just like we always have. Right, just like we always have. In other words, if the start number is 0, then we're going to prompt, not do any changes. Else, if, so if the start number's not 0, so else if 0 is not equal to the start number, right? In other words, and actually you could say, well, if it's not this, all you have to do is you could do it like this. You could say else, because if it's 0 here, then it's not 0 here. Then if it's not 0, we're going to say prompt. So let's copy this. We're going to say prompt for numbers. But instead of passing in start number, I'm going to do something that's done quite often in the world of C, is pass in the value of null. By passing in the value of null, we're going to go and modify that function to say we don't need the start number anymore. We already have it. So if we don't have it, we're going to prompt and point to where we need it. But if we already have it, we're not going to prompt. Okay, pause and think about that a moment. This is used quite often in the world of C. You'll pass in a null pointer if you want to tell the function you don't care about that particular parameter, which in this case we don't. We don't need the start number in this case. Now again, you could run your code just to make sure you don't have any syntax errors or anything, and it should run right now just like it always has. Right? No change. But now let's go into this prompt for numbers, which we know we have that function from a previous video. So the prompt for numbers right here. Instead of always entering this, we're going to say if null is exactly, or pardon me, if null, actually we even do it simpler. We'll say if start number, and I'll do a open, and be careful, it puts an open and close, but you just want an open. I'll tab over here, tab over here. I'll tab over here, tab over here, and tab over here. Now, as far as doing this assignment, this is where it gets very tricky when you're first learning about all this. Notice we have an open and closed curly brace there, open, closed curly brace here. Same thing here and here. One way to check is notice these little tiny plus and minus things here. It says minus right now. If I click on it, notice how it closes it up. So if start number, we've got this code here, and I can expand it, contract it, expand it, contract it. So that way you know your open and closed curly braces are lined up as you expect. Notice I can do that with this if statement as well. So this allows us now to actually only if this is not null. In other words, we're expecting this to point to something, but if we pass in 0, that is null has the value of 0, then we just bypass this if statement, right? Meaning we don't need it. Okay, big moment of truth. Click on run. Yes. Oh, let's do 5 and 15. So it works just like it used to work. Okay, that's good. Then I'll clear the screen. How about if we say main dash dash start, but that's all I do, which we know says not enough arguments. So it's still prompting me for the start. So I'll say 5 and 15. But now let's do it one more time. Do a clear period slash main dash dash start 5. Press enter. Want to continue? Yes. So we see we've got our entries here. Enter the N number. Cool. Notice it did not prompt for the start number. It did not prompt for the start number because we had entered start here. So it's only asking us for the N number. So if I say 15, cool. So we've got it where we handle the slash main, the dash start, and 5. Now since this video is a little long, I'm not going to put the dash end here. I'll just do the dash start and leave it as an exercise. In fact, I would highly encourage you to go ahead and also put the dash end. So if you ended that, entered the dash end, you could handle that case as well. But first, make sure you fully understand this program. It's a really good one, lots of good concepts. Remember, when things aren't working right, just take your time. You can pause the video, you can rewatch it multiple times, but all the code is right here. So all there waiting for you to make it run. Okay, I'm Norman McIntyre. Thanks for watching.